CEO's paralyzed daughter lost all hope until a single dad whispered, "I'll help her." Sometimes life has a way of stripping away everything we thought we were, our strength, our pride, our hope, and it leaves us sitting in the silence, wondering if we'll ever rise again. That was exactly where Emily Hart, the only daughter of billionaire CEO Richard Hart, found herself. Emily had been a vibrant soul, full of energy and laughter. She was the kind of young woman who never walked into a room unnoticed. Her father's empire was vast, but Emily had her own dreams. Dreams of traveling, painting, and one day opening an art school for underprivileged children. But all of that ended on a rainy night that no one in the Hart mansion could forget. The BU accident came without warning. A speeding car, a screech of tires, and the sickening crunch of metal against metal. Emily survived, but when she opened her eyes in the hospital days later, she was told she would never walk again. Her world shattered. At first, people surrounded her. Her father hired the best doctors, the most expensive therapists, even specialists from overseas. But the verdict was always the same. She will never walk again. Her friends stopped visiting after a while, their cheerful voices replaced by excuses. The mansion grew colder, her father busier, and Emily retreated into silence. She stopped painting. She stopped smiling. She stopped trying. Her days were spent staring out the window of her lavish bedroom, watching a world she no longer felt part of. Hope for her was a cruel memory. But life has a way of sending help from the most unexpected places. Miles away, in a modest little neighborhood, lived Daniel Brooks, a single father raising his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Daniel was no billionaire, no powerful man. He worked 2 jobs, one at a hardware store, another as a driver, just to keep food on the table. But what he lacked in wealth, he made up for in compassion. Lily had been born with a mild developmental condition. Doctors once told Daniel she might never read or write properly. But Daniel refused to give up. Patiently, lovingly, he worked with her every night. He believed in her when no one else did. And little by little, Lily blossomed. It was through a stroke of fate, or maybe destiny, that their worlds collided. Richard Hart, desperate yet again, had funded a new therapy wing. At a rehabilitation center, Emily was enrolled, though she went reluctantly, convinced it was pointless. Daniel, meanwhile, volunteered at that very center on weekends, teaching simple exercises to patients because Lily had once been treated there, and he wanted to give. In fact, that's where Daniel first saw Emily. She was sitting in her wheelchair, her face pale, her eyes distant. She looked like someone who had stopped believing in tomorrow. Most people avoided her, either out of intimidation, after all, she was the CEO's daughter, or out of pity. But Daniel, he just saw a young woman in pain. One evening, when the therapists had left, Daniel noticed Emily struggling with the simple task of reaching for a dropped pencil. She stared at it for a long time, tears welling, before giving up. He stepped closer, crouched down, picked it up, and gently placed it in her hand. Emily didn't thank him. She just muttered, "It doesn't matter. Nothing matters anymore." That was the first time Daniel leaned closer and whispered words that would change everything. "I'll help you." Emily looked at him, startled. "You don't even know." "Me?" she said bitterly. Daniel smiled softly. "I don't need to. I just know you haven't given up yet. Otherwise, you wouldn't still be here." For the first time in months, Emily felt something stir, a tiny flicker of hope. The next day, Daniel was there again. Not as a therapist, not as an employee, but simply as a friend. He began spending time with her, telling her about Lily, sharing stories that made her laugh. At first, Emily resisted, building walls around her pain. But Daniel was patient. He didn't push. He simply showed up day after day with quiet kindness. Then came the moment that began her healing. One afternoon, Lily came running into the rehab center, holding a crayon drawing she'd made for her dad. Emily watched her, a little girl so full of life, despite the challenges she faced. Lily noticed Emily sitting alone and, without hesitation, walked over and said, "You're pretty. Do you want to color with me?" Emily blinked, stunned. No one had spoken to her so innocently, so freely, in months. She hesitated, then slowly wheeled closer. For the first time since the accident, Emily picked up a colored pencil. Her hands trembled, but she began to draw, and she smiled. From that day, everything began to change. Daniel started guiding Emily in small exercises, not the kind her therapists forced on her, but little steps, strengthening her arms, adjusting her posture, helping her move just a little more each day. He reminded her gently but firmly that her life wasn't over. There were setbacks. Days when Emily broke down, screaming that it was useless. Nights when she told him to leave her alone. But Daniel never left. His words became her anchor. "You're stronger than you think." Slowly, Emily began to believe him. Weeks turned into months. And though her legs remained paralyzed, her spirit began to heal. She started painting again, this time with Lily beside her. She laughed, she cried, she even began speaking with her father again, telling him about the single dad and his little girl who had brought light back into her life. Richard Hart, a man who thought money could solve everything, watched in awe. No doctor, no specialist, no million-dollar treatment had done what Daniel's compassion had achieved. One evening, Emily surprised everyone. During a therapy session, she managed, with braces and support, to stand for just a few seconds. The room erupted in cheers, but Emily's eyes went straight to Daniel. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "You helped me believe again." But the story didn't end there. Emily, inspired by her own journey, decided she wanted to help others who had lost hope. With her father's support and Daniel's encouragement, she launched a foundation for young people with disabilities, creating art programs, mentorship, and rehabilitation support. Daniel and Lily were by her side every step of the way. The CEO's mansion, once silent, now echoed with laughter and life. Emily found new purpose, not in walking, but in lifting others. She learned that healing wasn't always about the body. It was about the soul. And as for Daniel, what began as compassion grew into something deeper. Slowly, Emily realized she had fallen for the man who had seen her not as a broken heiress, but as a person worth fighting for. Daniel, humble and kind, felt the same. Their bond was no fairy tale romance, but a love rooted in trust, in healing, in second chances. Years later, at a public event, Emily stood on stage with a cane, addressing a crowd of young people facing struggles of their own. She told them, "Sometimes hope doesn't come in the form of miracles or medicine. Sometimes it comes in the form of a kind stranger who whispers, 'I'll help you.' And if you hold on to that, you'll find strength you never knew you had." The audience erupted in applause, and as she stepped off the stage, Daniel and Lily were waiting with open arms. Emily's story had begun in tragedy, but it blossomed into a testimony of resilience, love, and the power of compassion. So, whenever you feel like giving up, remember this. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can ignite the biggest flame of hope. And that is why the CEO's paralyzed daughter, who once thought her life was over, found a new beginning. All because a single dad whispered, "I'll help her." If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more.